She hid more than scars beneath those sleeves. She hid a past that almost destroyed her. One whispered question changed everything. Ryan had been working at the design company for about 3 months when he first noticed her. Lisa was the new graphic designer who joined their floor, and from day one, something about her caught his attention. Not in a romantic way exactly, but there was just something different about her. She was incredibly talented at her work, always finishing projects ahead of schedule, but she kept to herself most of the time. What struck Ryan the most was how she always wore full-sleeve shirts, even during the hottest days of summer when everyone else was complaining about the heat and the office air conditioning couldn't keep up. Lisa would show up in long sleeves, cardigans, full-sleeve blouses, lightweight sweaters, always covered from shoulder to wrist. He didn't think much of it at first. People have their own style, right? But it wasn't just the clothes. Lisa had this way of keeping everyone at a distance. During lunch breaks, when the team would gather in the break room to chat and laugh, she'd eat quickly at her desk and get back to work. When colleagues invited her to Friday evening hangouts at the local cafe, she'd politely decline with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Birthday celebrations, weekend plans, casual conversations about life outside work, she'd listen and nod, but never really share anything about herself. Ryan found himself curious. Not in a nosy way, but genuinely wondering what made her so guarded. She seemed lonely, though she'd never admit it. Sometimes he'd catch her staring out the window with this faraway look, like her mind was somewhere else entirely, somewhere painful. The breakthrough moment came on a random Tuesday evening. Ryan had stayed late to finish a presentation for a client meeting the next morning. The office was mostly empty, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of the cleaning crew on another floor. He was making himself the third cup of coffee when he walked past Lisa's desk and saw her sitting there, still working. But something was wrong. Her face was wet with tears. She wasn't making any sound, just silent tears streaming down her cheeks while she stared at her computer screen. Her hands were gripping the edge of her desk so tight her knuckles had turned white. Ryan stopped in his tracks. Should he say something? Walk away and pretend he didn't see? Offer help? Before he could decide, she noticed him standing there. The look on her face was pure panic. She quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hands, trying to compose herself. "Sorry, I'm just tired," she said, her voice shaky. Long day, but Ryan could see she was trembling. This wasn't just tiredness. This was something much deeper. He wanted to ask if she was okay, wanted to help somehow, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he just nodded and walked back to his desk, feeling useless. After that night, he started paying more attention. Not in a creepy way, but with genuine concern. He noticed patterns he'd missed before. Lisa's mood would shift, sometimes without warning. She'd be fine one moment, then suddenly withdrawn and quiet the next. She never took personal calls at work, never mentioned family or friends, never talked about her weekends or vacation plans. There were also physical signs he'd overlooked. The way she'd wince sometimes when reaching for files on high shelves. How she'd favor one side when carrying heavy project binders. The slight limp she tried to hide when she thought no one was watching. And always those long sleeves, even when the office felt like a sauna. Ryan didn't know what to do with these observations. He wasn't close enough to her to ask direct questions, and he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So, he did small things instead. When he made coffee, he'd make an extra cup and leave it on her desk. When the team ordered lunch, he'd make sure to ask her preference, even though she usually said she'd already eaten. He'd hold the door, offer to help carry supplies, make space for her in conversations without forcing her to participate. She noticed. He could tell by the way her guarded expression would soften slightly when he did these small kindnesses. She'd give him a genuine smile, brief but real, before putting her walls back up. 3 weeks after the crying incident, something shifted. The company had just landed a huge contract with a major client, and the boss ordered pizza and drinks for everyone to celebrate. It was late afternoon, and the office had that relaxed Friday feeling. Everyone was laughing, sharing stories, making plans for the weekend. To Ryan's surprise, Lisa stayed. Usually, she'd grab a slice and disappear. But this time she lingered near the edge of the group. She wasn't participating much, but she was there, and that felt significant. As the celebration wound down and people started leaving, Ryan found himself gathering empty pizza boxes and paper plates. Most of the team had already left, heading out to continue the party at a nearby bar. He'd declined the invitation, preferring a quiet evening at home. When he walked out onto the small balcony attached to their floor to get some fresh air, he was surprised to find Lisa already there. She was leaning against the railing, looking out at the city skyline as the sun began to set. The orange and pink light painted everything in warm colors. And for a moment, she looked peaceful. Ryan almost turned back, not wanting to intrude on her moment. But she'd already heard him. "Beautiful evening," she said without turning around. "Yeah, it really is," Ryan replied, moving to stand a respectful distance away at the railing. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching cars move through the streets below and lights beginning to flicker on in surrounding buildings. Then Lisa started talking, and once she started, the words seemed to flow easier than usual. She told him about growing up in a small town, about her love for art and design, about moving to the city for college and never looking back. She talked about her favorite coffee shop, a book she was reading, how she'd always wanted to learn pottery but never had the time. These were normal things, everyday things. But coming from her, they felt like precious gifts. She was letting him see a glimpse of the person behind the walls. Ryan shared too. He told her about his family, his 2 younger sisters, his mom's terrible cooking that everyone pretended to love, his dad's collection of bad jokes. He talked about his failed attempt at learning guitar and his embarrassing fear of birds. She actually laughed at that, a real, genuine laugh that lit up her whole face. Then, in a moment that seemed to happen in slow motion, she reached up to brush her hair back from her face. The movement made her sleeve slide down slightly, just a few inches. In that brief moment, Ryan saw it, a scar, actually, several scars, raised and pale against her skin, extending from her wrist toward her elbow. She caught his glance. Their eyes met. The air between them suddenly felt heavy with unspoken things. Ryan saw panic flash across her face as she quickly pulled her sleeve back down, covering the scars. Her whole body tensed up, preparing for questions, judgment, or worse, pity. But Ryan had noticed something else in that brief glimpse. These weren't small scars from an accident. They were extensive, the kind that told a story of something serious, something life-changing. The silence stretched between them. Lisa's hand gripped the railing, and he could see her deciding whether to run, to make an excuse and leave, to rebuild those walls even higher than before. Her breathing had quickened, and she was staring determinedly at the skyline, refusing to meet his eyes. "Curious what I'm hiding?" she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. The question hung in the air between them. Ryan's mind raced. This was clearly a moment that mattered, a turning point. How he responded would determine whether she trusted him or shut him out forever. He thought about all the times he'd seen people handle difficult situations badly, saying the wrong thing with good intentions, pushing too hard or not enough. He could ask what happened. He could say something comforting. He could pretend he hadn't seen anything. He could make a joke to lighten the mood. But none of those felt right. Instead, he took a breath and said the only thing that felt honest. "Only if you want to tell me." The words came out gentle, without pressure or expectation. He wasn't demanding her story, wasn't trying to satisfy his curiosity. He was simply letting her know that the door was open, but she didn't have to walk through it unless she chose to. Lisa turned to look at him then. Really look at him. Searching his face for something. Maybe she was looking for judgment, or excessive curiosity, or that particular kind of pity that makes people feel small. Whatever she was looking for, she didn't seem to find it. Instead, she saw someone who was offering to listen, without demands. Lisa's shoulders relaxed slightly. though her hand still gripped the railing. She nodded slowly, more to herself than to him. "Not here," she said quietly, glancing back toward the office windows where a few people were still visible inside. "But maybe. Would you want to grab coffee tomorrow?" "Saturday morning?" Ryan agreed immediately, trying to keep his tone casual even though he understood the significance of what she was offering. They exchanged numbers for the first time despite working together for months. As she gathered her things to leave, there was something different in her expression. Fear, yes, but also something like relief, as if she'd been carrying a heavy secret for so long that even the possibility of sharing it felt lighter. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those scars, about the sadness he'd seen in her eyes since the day they met, about the walls she'd built so carefully around herself. He wondered what story she would tell, and whether he was ready to hear it. Part of him was nervous. What if it was something he didn't know how to handle? What if he said the wrong thing and made everything worse? Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. They'd agreed to meet at a small cafe on the quiet side of town, away from anywhere their coworkers might go. Ryan arrived first, choosing a corner table away from the windows, somewhere private. When Lisa walked in 10 minutes later, he could see the anxiety written all over her face. She was wearing long sleeves again, a light blue cardigan over a white shirt, and she was gripping her bag strap like a lifeline. He ordered for both of them while she settled into her chair. Tea for her, coffee for him, and a couple of pastries that neither of them would probably eat. The cafe was quiet, just a few other customers scattered around, the soft hum of conversation and clinking cups providing a gentle background noise. For a few minutes, they made small talk. The weather, a funny thing that happened at work, a new restaurant opening nearby, but it felt forced, like both of them were avoiding the real reason they were there. Finally, Lisa took a deep breath and wrapped her hands around her teacup. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady but quiet. I was in a car accident. A bad one. She paused, staring into her tea like the memories were playing out in the ripples on the surface. Ryan stayed quiet, giving her space to continue at her own pace. My boyfriend was driving, Tom. We'd been together for 3 years, and we were engaged, planning a wedding for the following spring. A sad smile flickered across her face at the memory. We were happy. Really happy. Or at least, I thought we were. She took a sip of tea, and Ryan noticed her hands were shaking slightly. That night, we'd been at dinner with friends. Nothing special. Just a normal Friday evening. On the way home, we had a stupid argument. I can't even remember what it started about. Something small and meaningless. But it escalated, the way fights sometimes do. I was angry, he was frustrated, and neither of us was really listening to the other. Her voice grew quieter. I told him to take a different route home, a shortcut I knew. If I'd just kept quiet. If we'd taken the usual way. She trailed off, lost in the what-ifs. The other driver ran a red light. Never even slowed down. Witnesses said they must have been going at least 70 in a 40 zone. They hit us on the passenger side. My side. She finally looked up at Ryan, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Tom died instantly. The doctor said he wouldn't have felt anything, that it was too quick. I don't know if they were just trying to make me feel better. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He wanted to say something. Anything. But he kept quiet, letting her tell her story. I was trapped in the car for almost an hour while they cut me out. I was conscious for most of it. I kept calling Tom's name, but he never answered. I think I knew. Even then. But I couldn't accept it. She paused, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. I had multiple injuries, broken ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. But my arms took the worst of it. Crushed between the door and the center console. The doctors did what they could. Multiple surgeries. But the scarring is permanent. She slowly rolled up one sleeve, fully this time, revealing the extent of the scars. They covered most of her forearm, a complex pattern of surgical scars and trauma marks, some raised, some flat. All telling the story of a body that had been broken and painstakingly put back together. Ryan looked at the scars she'd revealed, not with shock or pity, but with quiet understanding. He could see this wasn't easy for her. Showing someone the physical proof of the worst day of her life. Lisa watched his reaction carefully, as if expecting him to recoil or look away uncomfortably. When he did, neither, just nodded gently for her to continue if she wanted. Something in her expression softened. I spent 4 months in the hospital and rehabilitation, she continued, slowly rolling her sleeve back down. The physical pain was terrible. But honestly, that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the guilt. It consumed everything. I survived and Tom didn't. Why? What made my life worth saving and his not? We were in the same car, hit by the same drunk driver. But I got to keep breathing, and he didn't. She wrapped her arms around herself, a protective gesture Ryan had seen her do many times at work. Now he understood what she was protecting herself from. His family was kind to me, which somehow made it worse. They visited me in the hospital, told me it wasn't my fault, that Tom would want me to recover and live my life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I hadn't insisted on that route, if I hadn't started that argument, maybe we'd have been somewhere else when that car ran the red light. Maybe we'd both still be whole. Ryan finally spoke, his voice gentle. The drunk driver made a choice to get behind the wheel. That's not on you. I know that logically, Lisa said, shaking her head. My therapist repeated it hundreds of times. But logic and emotion don't always match up, you know? After I got out of the hospital, I fell into this deep depression. I couldn't go back to my old job because everyone knew what happened, and the pity in their eyes was unbearable. I couldn't stay in my apartment because Tom's things were everywhere, reminders of the life we'd planned. So I moved. New city, new job. Then I did it again a year later. And again, running from the pain, from the memories, from anyone who might get close enough to ask questions. She looked directly at Ryan then. That's why I keep people away. Because getting close to someone means eventually explaining all of this. It means reliving the worst day of my life, over and over. It means watching people's expressions change when they learn I'm broken in ways they can't fix. Most people don't know what to do with this much pain. They either treat me like I'm fragile, like I might shatter at any moment, or they get uncomfortable and distance themselves. Either way, the friendship never survives. The cafe had filled up a bit more, the morning rush bringing in couples and families, but their corner felt separate, like a small island of vulnerability in a sea of normal Saturday mornings. Ryan thought carefully about what to say next. This was exactly the moment Lisa had described. The moment where people usually got it wrong. I lost my dad when I was 17, he said finally. Cancer. We watched him get sicker for 2 years, and there was nothing anyone could do. For a long time after, I was angry at everything. Angry at the doctors. Angry at the world. Angry at my dad for leaving us. Angry at myself for being angry. My girlfriend at the time. We'd been together since high school. She tried to help at first, but eventually, my grief became too heavy for her. She needed me to move on faster than I could, needed me to be the person I was before, and I just couldn't be that person anymore. He paused, taking a sip of his now cool coffee. We got engaged anyway, about a year after he died. I think we both thought it would fix things, give us something positive to focus on. But you can't build a future on pretending the past didn't happen. She called off the wedding 3 months before the date. Said she felt like she was living with a ghost, that I was still too stuck in my loss. Maybe she was right. It took me a long time to understand that grief doesn't have a timeline, and healing isn't linear. Lisa was listening intently now, and Ryan could see recognition in her eyes. The recognition of someone who understood that pain doesn't just disappear because time passes. That loss changes you in fundamental ways. I'm not saying I understand exactly what you went through, Ryan continued. What happened to you was traumatic, in ways I can't fully comprehend. But I do understand what it's like to carry loss, to feel guilty for still being here, to have people expect you to be over it on their schedule. And I understand why you'd rather keep people at a distance than risk them not knowing how to handle your story." They sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd been broken by loss, sitting across from each other on a Saturday morning in a cafe neither of them would remember the name of. The weeks after that coffee meeting changed something fundamental between them. Lisa didn't suddenly become an open book, and Ryan didn't try to fix her or rush her healing. Instead, they fell into an easy friendship built on understanding and patience. They started having lunch together at work. Not every day, but often enough that it became a comfortable routine. Their conversations moved beyond work projects and into real territory. Books, childhood memories, dreams they'd given up on and ones they still held on to. Lisa started opening up in small ways. She told him about Tom, not just about the accident, but about the good times too. How they'd met in college when they both reached for the last chocolate croissant at the campus cafe. How he'd proposed during a rainy camping trip, completely ruining his planned romantic moment but making it perfect anyway. How he used to leave terrible puns written on sticky notes around their apartment. Talking about him hurt, but she found that sharing the happy memories alongside the pain made it a bit easier to carry. Ryan shared more of his own story too. About his mother's quiet strength after his father died. About his sisters rallying around the family even as teenagers. About the failed engagement, and how it taught him that sometimes people come into your life for a season, not forever. And that's okay. About his own therapy journey, and how long it took him to stop feeling ashamed for needing help. Their coworkers noticed the change. Lisa started accepting invitations to team lunches occasionally. She still declined most after-work events, but she'd stay for birthday celebrations in the office and actually engage in conversations. People stopped walking on eggshells around her, though Ryan made sure to quietly redirect anyone who got too pushy or asked invasive questions. One particularly hot afternoon, about 4 months into their friendship, Lisa walked into the office wearing a short-sleeved blouse. No cardigan, no cover-up. Just a simple, cream-colored blouse with sleeves that ended at her elbows, her scars visible to anyone who looked. Ryan noticed immediately but didn't make a big deal of it. A few coworkers glanced but most didn't comment. It was just another step forward. Another small victory in her journey of not hiding anymore. The real test came from Brian, the tactless guy from accounting who never knew when to keep his mouth shut. He walked past Lisa's desk, stopped, stared, and said loudly, "Whoa, what happened to your arms?" The entire office seemed to go quiet. Lisa froze, her face paling. Ryan, who'd been at the printer nearby, smoothly stepped in. "Hey Brian, did you finish those quarterly reports? The boss was asking about them earlier." He kept his tone, friendly but firm, physically positioning himself to block Brian's view and giving Lisa space to breathe. Brian, oblivious as always, launched into a defensive explanation about the reports. Ryan walked him back toward his own desk, keeping the conversation going until the moment had passed. When he returned, Lisa caught his eye and mouthed a quiet, "Thank you." Her hands were still shaking slightly, but she hadn't run to cover up. She'd stayed, visible, vulnerable, and she'd survived the awkward moment. Later, when they grabbed coffee after work, she brought it up. "I almost put my cardigan on after that happened. My brain was screaming at me to hide, to cover up, to protect myself." "But you didn't," Ryan pointed out. "No, I didn't, because I realized something. Brian's an insensitive person, whether I'm wearing long sleeves or not. His rudeness isn't about my scars, it's about who he is. And I'm tired of making myself smaller or hiding parts of my story just to make other people comfortable." Ryan smiled. "That's growth right there." She smiled back, a genuine one that reached her eyes. "I've also been thinking about something my therapist suggested years ago. She wanted me to consider joining a support group for accident survivors. I refused at the time, said I wasn't ready, but maybe I am now. Maybe sharing my story could help someone else who's struggling." Over the next few months, Lisa did join that support group. She started volunteering, helping others navigate the aftermath of traumatic accidents. She found purpose in turning her pain into something that could help others, and Ryan could see the lightness returning to her step. The genuine smiles happening more frequently. Their friendship remained steady and strong. Ryan started dating someone he met through a friend, and Lisa encouraged him, even offering advice when his anxiety about relationships tried to hold him back. She met someone too, a guy named Chris, who'd also been through loss, and understood that healing wasn't linear. When Chris wanted to get serious, Lisa was terrified, but she talked through it with Ryan and her therapist and decided to take the risk. A year and a half after that conversation on the office balcony, Ryan got married. Lisa was there at the wedding, wearing a beautiful, sleeveless dress, her scars visible, and her smile radiant. She'd brought Chris, who Ryan liked immediately. During the reception, Lisa pulled Ryan aside. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "That day on the balcony, when you could have reacted a dozen different ways, you chose the one that gave me space to be myself. You didn't push, didn't pry, didn't treat me like I was broken. You just offered to listen. That changed everything for me." Ryan shook his head. "You did the hard work. You chose to trust me with your story. You chose to heal. I just showed up." "Sometimes showing up is everything," she replied, giving him a hug. As Ryan watched his wife dancing with her father and saw Lisa laughing with Chris at their table, he thought about how life takes unexpected turns, how pain and loss are part of everyone's story, but they don't have to be the whole story. How sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see your scars and trust that they won't run away. How healing isn't about forgetting or moving on, but about integrating your past into your present and still finding reasons to smile. The DJ played another song, couples filled the dance floor, and life continued forward, carrying its broken and healing people along with it, toward tomorrows that couldn't be predicted but could still hold hope.